Commander Vex Thalan stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching his homeworld die. Through the massive viewing screen, Kairos Prime looked like a burning coal floating in space. The planet's surface glowed red and orange as massive heat waves rose from the ground. What had once been green forests and blue oceans was now nothing but cracked earth and boiling seas. The star that had given life to his world for millions of years was killing it now. Solar flares shot out from the dying sun like angry tentacles, each one stripping away more of Kairos Prime's atmosphere. The air was getting thinner by the hour. Soon, there would be nothing left to breathe. Vex turned to his communications officer, a young Zalarian named Cole. "Send out another distress call. All frequencies. Tell them we need immediate evacuation assistance for 40 million civilians." Cole's fingers moved quickly over his control panel. "Signal sent, Commander. That makes 67 calls in the past 3 days. And how many responses?" Cole looked down at his screen, his expression grim. "Still 0, sir." Vex clenched his fists. He knew why no one was answering. The Zalarian Empire had spent the last 3 centuries conquering other worlds. They had taken planets by force, enslaved entire populations, and destroyed anyone who stood in their way. His people had been the terror of the galaxy for generations. Now that terror was coming back to haunt them. The bridge door slid open, and General Kar Volan walked in. The old warrior looked tired. His usually perfect uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Any word from the evacuation ships?" Vex asked. "We managed to get another 100,000 people off-world today," Kar replied. "But at this rate, we can only save about 2 million before the star goes completely dark. That leaves 38 million who will die here." Vex felt sick. 2 million saved out of 40 million. It was not enough. It would never be enough. "What about the orbital stations? Can we modify them to hold more people?" Kar shook his head. "We've already packed them beyond safe limits. The life support systems are failing on 3 stations. We had to move those people back to the planet's surface. The planet's surface, where the temperature was rising every hour, where the air was getting thinner and more toxic, where children cried for water that no longer existed, and parents watched their families slowly suffocate." Vex walked to the communications station. "Cole, show me the list of civilizations we've contacted." The screen filled with names: the Altarian Federation, the Etherian Collective, the Corvan Empire, the Draxian Republic, the Unified Worlds Alliance. All of them had received Zalarian distress calls. All of them had remained silent. "Try the Altarians again," Vex ordered. Cole opened a channel. "Altarian Command. This is Commander Vex Thalan of the Zalarian Defense Force. Our sun is dying. We need immediate evacuation assistance for 40 million civilians. We are willing to discuss terms." The response came quickly. "Zalarian vessel, this is Admiral Vex of the Altarian Federation. We remember what your people did to our colonies on Sigma 7. We remember the millions you killed. Find someone else to help you." The channel went dead. Vex tried not to show his anger, but his hands were shaking. "Try the Etherians." "Etherian Collective, this is Commander Vex Thalan. We need help. Our people are dying." This time the voice that answered was calm and musical, the way Etherians always spoke. "Commander Thalan, we understand your situation. However, our resources are currently committed to other humanitarian efforts. We cannot assist you at this time." Another dead channel. "The Corvans," Vex said through gritted teeth. "Corvan Empire, this is Commander Vex Thalan. We need evacuation ships. 40 million lives are at stake." The Corvan response was short and brutal. "The Corvan Empire does not provide humanitarian aid to species that have committed genocide. Your people chose their path long ago." "General," Kar put his hand on Vex's shoulder. "Commander, perhaps we should consider other options. We could try to contact some of the smaller civilizations, the Betan traders maybe, or the free colonies." "They don't have ships large enough for this kind of operation," Vex replied. "We need major fleet support. Industrial-level evacuation capability." "Then we're out of options." Vex stared at the screen showing his dying world. Somewhere down there, his own family was waiting for rescue that might never come. His wife Nira was probably trying to keep their 2 young children calm while the sky burned above them. There has to be someone, he said quietly. Someone in this galaxy who will help us. Cole suddenly straightened at his station. Commander, I'm getting a response. From who? Cole checked his readings twice before answering. It's from human space, sir. A ship calling itself Liberty's Dawn. Vex felt his blood run cold. Humans, the species his people had raided dozens of times over the past 50 years. The ones they called weak because they preferred talking to fighting. The ones Zalarian commanders used as examples of what happened to civilizations that chose peace over strength. Put them through, Vex said. The screen flickered, and suddenly, they were looking at a human bridge. The captain was a middle-aged man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. His uniform was simple and clean. Behind him, Vex could see other humans working at their stations. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty's Dawn, the man said. His voice was steady and professional. We received your distress call. Vex didn't know what to say. Of all the species in the galaxy, humans were the last ones he had expected to respond. Captain Morrison, he finally managed. Our son is dying. We need evacuation assistance for 40 million people. Jake nodded. We understand the situation, Commander. We're transmitting your coordinates to our fleet command now. Your fleet command? Yes. We'll need more than 1 ship for this operation. Jake looked directly at Vex through the screen. We're coming, Commander. Hold your position and keep your people safe. Help is on the way. The channel closed, leaving the Zalarian bridge in stunned silence. General Carr was the first to speak. Humans? They're actually coming to help us. Vex stared at the now empty screen. It appears so. But why? We've attacked their colonies. We've killed their people. Why would they help their enemies? Vex had no answer. In all his years as a military commander, he had never encountered anything like this. The strong were supposed to crush the weak. Enemies were supposed to destroy each other. That was how the galaxy worked. But apparently humans followed different rules. How long until they arrive? Carr asked. Vex turned to Cole. Calculate their likely travel time from the nearest human territory. Cole worked quickly. If they're coming from their closest base, probably 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days. Vex looked back at the screen showing Kairos Prime. 3 days might be enough if the humans were really bringing a fleet. If they could organize a proper evacuation. If they actually intended to help instead of arriving just to watch the Zalarians. First, for the first time in weeks, Commander Vex Thalan allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten. Hope. 3 days later, space around Kairos Prime suddenly filled with ships. Not just 1 or 2 vessels, but an entire fleet. Commander Vex Thalan watched from his bridge as human ships dropped out of hyperspace one after another. 27 massive transport vessels, each one larger than anything in the Zalarian fleet. 15 medical ships with red crosses painted on their hulls. Dozens of smaller support craft buzzing between the larger ships like worker bees. Count them again. Vex ordered his sensor officer. 62 ships total, Commander. All human registry. The largest fleet we've ever seen in our space. Vex stared at the display screen. Each transport ship could hold nearly 2 million people. The medical ships were equipped with the most advanced healing technology in the galaxy. The support vessels carried food, water, and emergency supplies. This was not a rescue mission. This was a full-scale evacuation operation. General Carr stood beside him, equally amazed. They actually came. All of them. The largest ship in the human fleet moved closer to Vex's command vessel. It was a beautiful ship, white and silver with clean lines and powerful engines. The name New Horizon was written in bold letters across its side. Incoming transmission from the flagship, Cole reported. Put it on screen. The bridge filled with the image of a human woman. She was tall and confident, with short black hair and intelligent brown eyes. Her uniform bore the insignia of an admiral. Behind her, the human bridge was a model of calm efficiency. Commander Thalan, I am Admiral Lisa Chen of the Human Fleet. We're here to help. Vex felt confused. This was not how military encounters were supposed to work. Where were the demands, the conditions, the threats? Admiral Chen, he replied carefully. We appreciate your response to our distress call. We've analyzed your situation, Admiral Chen continued. Our computers show we can evacuate your entire population within 6 days if we coordinate properly. My chief medical officer has prepared temporary living spaces for your people during the journey. 6 days. Complete evacuation. Vex could hardly believe what he was hearing. Admiral, I need to ask you something. Why are you doing this? Your people have every reason to hate us. We've attacked your colonies, we've killed your civilians, why would you help your enemies? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. She looked past the camera toward something Vex could not see. When she spoke again, her voice was firm but kind. Commander, today you are not our enemies. Today you are people who need help. That's all that matters. The transmission ended, leaving Vex staring at the empty screen. General Carr shook his head slowly. I don't understand them, Carr said. No species in the galaxy thinks like this. Maybe that's why they're different, Vex replied. Within hours, the evacuation began. Human shuttlecraft started flying down to Kairos Prime's surface, their heat shields glowing as they pushed through the planet's burning atmosphere. Each shuttle could carry 500 people safely. They landed in the refugee camps that dotted the planet's surface, places where millions of Zalarians waited for rescue. Vex decided to go down to the planet himself to oversee the operation. His personal shuttle landed at Camp 7, one of the largest refugee centers. What he saw there changed everything he thought he knew about humans. A human medical team had set up emergency treatment stations throughout the camp. The lead doctor was a woman with red hair and gentle hands. She moved from patient to patient, treating radiation burns and breathing problems caused by the toxic air. Her name tag read Dr. Rachel Martinez. Vex watched as she knelt beside a young Zalarian child who was crying from pain. The child's parents had been killed in a building collapse, and she was alone and scared. Dr. Martinez spoke to her in broken Zalarian, trying to comfort her while treating her injuries. It's okay, little one, the doctor said. We're going to take care of you. The child looked up at the human woman with wide, frightened eyes. Are you going to hurt me? No, sweetheart. We're here to help. We're going to get you somewhere safe. Dr. Martinez finished treating the child and carried her to one of the evacuation shuttles. As they walked, she continued talking to the girl, distracting her from the chaos around them. Other human medics did the same throughout the camp, treating injured Zalarians with the same care they would show their own people. At the shuttle loading area, Vex met Lieutenant Ben Jackson, the human officer in charge of food distribution. Jackson was a young man with a friendly smile and unlimited energy. He had organized the refugees into orderly groups and was making sure everyone received meals before boarding the shuttles. Commander Thalan, Jackson said when he saw Vex, we've got hot food for everyone. Nothing fancy, but it's nutritious and filling. We've also got water purification tablets and medical supplies for the journey. Lieutenant, how did you prepare all this so quickly? Jackson grinned. We've been planning evacuation operations like this for years. It's what we do. When people need help, we help them. As if to prove his point, Jackson handed a meal pack to an elderly Zalarian woman who was struggling to walk. He helped her to a seat and made sure she was comfortable before moving on to the next person. Throughout the day, Vex watched the human rescue teams work. They were organized and efficient, but more than that, they were kind. They helped children find their parents. They carried sick people to the medical stations. They shared their own food with hungry refugees. Captain Sarah Williams commanded one of the hospital ships. Her vessel, called Mercy's Call, was receiving the most seriously injured Zalarians. Vex visited the ship and found it filled with patients receiving treatment that would have been impossible on Kairos Prime. How many can you treat? Vex asked Captain Williams. As many as necessary, she replied. We've converted 3 cargo bays into additional medical wards. My crew is working 18-hour shifts, but nobody's complaining. Why are they working? So hard for people they don't know? Captain Williams looked at him with surprise. Because they're people, Commander. That's enough. On the planet's surface, human engineering teams worked alongside Zalarian technicians to speed up the evacuation process. They modified the landing pads to handle more shuttles at once. They set up temporary bridges over damaged areas. They even rigged emergency power systems to keep the refugee camps running. Chief Engineer Maya Patel led a team that was modifying the human transport ships to better accommodate Zalarian passengers. They installed different atmosphere processors because Zalarians breathed a slightly different air mixture than humans. They adjusted the gravity controls to match Zalarian preferences. They even changed the lighting to colors that were more comfortable for Zalarian eyes. "This must be costing you a fortune," General Carr observed as he watched the modifications. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead and smiled. "Money isn't important when lives are at stake. We can build more ships. We can't bring back dead people." As the first day of evacuation ended, nearly 300,000 Zalarians had been safely moved to the human ships. The process was working better than anyone had hoped. The human crews were professional and caring. The Zalarian refugees were cooperative and grateful. But something else was happening too. Young Zalarian soldiers were starting to volunteer to help with the rescue efforts. They worked side by side with human crew members, learning new ways to think about strength and duty. Zalarian families were sharing their few remaining possessions with the human rescuers. Commander Vex found himself working directly with Admiral Chen to coordinate the massive operation. She treated him as an equal partner, asking for his advice and listening to his suggestions. This was completely different from how Zalarian commanders typically worked. "Admiral," Vex said during one of their planning sessions, "I have to ask you again. This level of effort, this kindness toward enemies, it's not normal. How do your people justify it?" Admiral Chen looked at him with those calm brown eyes. "Commander, we don't need to justify helping people. We need to justify not helping them. And in this case, there's no justification for letting 40 million people die just because their government made bad choices in the past. But the cost of helping is always less than the cost of not helping. Always." As Vex returned to his quarters that night, he thought about everything he had seen. Human doctors treating Zalarian children. Human engineers working around the clock to save Zalarian lives. Human soldiers risking themselves to rescue people whose armies had attacked human worlds. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vex Thalan began to question everything he had been taught about strength, about enemies, and about what it really meant to be powerful. By the third day of the evacuation, the rescue operation had become something amazing to watch. Human ships moved in perfect formation around Kairos Prime, their shuttles flying back and forth like a well-organized dance. Every minute, another 500 Zalarians were lifted to safety. Every hour, another refugee camp was emptied and its people taken to the transport ships. Commander Vex stood in the command center of the New Horizon, watching the operation unfold. Admiral Chen had invited him to coordinate from the human flagship, treating him as a full partner in the rescue effort. Around him, human and Zalarian officers worked together at control stations, sharing information and solving problems as they came up. "Transport 7 is ready for the next group," reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Phillips, Admiral Chen's second-in-command. "That's another 2 million people safely aboard." "Excellent," Admiral Chen replied. "What's the status on the medical ships?" Dr. Rachel Martinez appeared on the main screen from the hospital ship Mercy's Call. Behind her, Vex could see busy medical wards filled with Zalarian patients receiving treatment. "We're treating about 3,000 new patients every day," Dr. Martinez reported. "Mostly radiation exposure and breathing problems from the toxic atmosphere. The good news is that 96% of our patients are making full recoveries." "Any supply shortages?" Admiral Chen asked. "None. Chief Jackson has been keeping us fully stocked with medical supplies and food. I've never seen logistics run this smoothly." On the planet's surface, the rescue work was getting more dangerous. The dying star was sending out stronger solar flares, and the planet's surface temperature was rising fast. But the human rescue teams kept working, pushing deeper into the most dangerous areas to find survivors. Marine Colonel Alex Rodriguez led the ground rescue operations. He was a tough man with scars on his face and hands that spoke of many battles. But Vex watched him carry a sick Solarian child to safety with the same care a father would show his own daughter. "Colonel Rodriguez, your teams are taking serious risks down there," Admiral Chen said during a briefing. "The radiation levels are getting dangerous." "Admiral, there are still people trapped in the ruins of the major cities," Rodriguez replied. "My Marines know the risks. They're willing to take them." Rodriguez's rescue teams were made up of volunteers from across the human fleet. Engineers, medics, ship crew members, even cooks and supply officers had volunteered to help with the ground operations. They worked in shifts, going down to the burning planet for 4 hours at a time before returning to the ships to recover from radiation exposure. Vex had asked to join one of the rescue missions, and Rodriguez had agreed. Together, they flew down to the ruins of Kelvar City, once home to 5 million Zolarians. Now it was mostly rubble and burning buildings, but thermal scans showed that people were still alive in the underground shelters. "Stay close to me," Rodriguez told Vex as they moved through the destroyed streets. "The air down here will kill you in about 20 minutes without a breathing mask." They found the shelter entrance buried under tons of concrete and steel. Rodriguez's team immediately began clearing the debris, working with handheld plasma cutters and heavy lifting equipment. It took 3 hours of dangerous work, but they finally broke through. Inside the shelter, they found 200 Zolarian civilians who had been trapped for days. They were weak from hunger and fear, but alive. Rodriguez's Marines immediately began distributing food and water while the medics checked everyone for injuries. An elderly Zolarian man approached Vex, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Commander, are these really humans? The same humans our armies have been fighting?" "Yes," Vex replied. "They are. But why are they helping us? Why are they risking their lives for people who have been their enemies?" Vex looked at Rodriguez, who was helping an injured Zolarian woman walk toward the evacuation shuttle. "I'm starting to think that's just who they are." Back on the ships, Chief Engineer Maya Patel was working miracles to accommodate the massive number of refugees. She had converted cargo holds into living spaces, modified the air systems to handle different atmospheric needs, and even redesigned the food production systems to create meals that Zolarians could digest. "Maya, you've been working for 36 hours straight," Admiral Chen observed during one of her inspections. "So has everyone else," Maya replied, not looking up from her work. "We're almost done modifying the last transport ship. Another 12 hours and we'll have room for everyone." The engineering teams were not just humans anymore. Young Zolarian technicians had volunteered to help with the modifications. They worked alongside human engineers, learning new techniques and sharing their own knowledge. Language barriers were overcome with gestures, drawings, and determination. Ensign Rick Torres, barely 20 years old, was teaching a group of Zolarian teenagers how to operate the ship's recycling systems. "It's important that everyone knows how these work," he explained. "The journey to your new home will take several weeks. We need to work together to keep everyone healthy." One of the Zolarian teenagers, a girl named Zara, raised her hand. "Ensign Torres, why are you teaching us this? Why don't you just do it yourselves?" Rick smiled. "Because you're not just passengers. You're our responsibility now, and we want you to understand how everything works so you can help take care of each other." The cultural exchange was happening everywhere. Human crew members were learning basic Zolarian phrases to communicate better with the refugees. Zolarian families were teaching human children traditional songs and games. In the ship's common areas, mixed groups of humans and Zolarians shared meals and stories. Captain Sarah Williams made daily visits to all the medical stations throughout the fleet. Her hospital ship Mercy's Call had become the center of medical care for the entire operation. She had treated over 15,000 Zolarian patients personally, working alongside Dr. Martinez and a team of volunteer medics. "Captain Williams," asked Dr. Martinez during one of their brief breaks, "do you ever think about what we're doing here? How this is changing everything?" "What do you mean?" Sarah replied. "I mean, we're not just saving lives. We're proving that different species can work together, that enemies can become friends, that the galaxy doesn't have to be about conquest and war." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that's the real rescue here. Not just saving the Zolarians from their dying star, but saving all of us from the way things have always been. The evacuation was ahead of schedule. By the end of the fourth day, 35 million Zolarians had been safely moved to the human ships. The remaining 5 million were being evacuated from the most remote locations on the planet. Everything was going perfectly, but Commander Vex knew that space operations were never simple. He had learned from years of military experience that something always went wrong at the worst possible moment. He just hoped that when it happened, they would be ready for it. On the morning of the fifth day, his fears came true. The dying star began its final collapse, sending out massive waves of deadly radiation. 3 human transport ships were caught in the radiation storm, their shields failing under the intense energy bombardment. Nearly 8,000 Zolarian refugees were aboard those ships, along with their human crew members. The ship's life support systems were failing, and they were too damaged to make the jump to hyperspace. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system, calm and determined. All ships, we have an emergency situation. 3 transports are in critical condition. We're going to get those people out of there. Commander Vex felt his heart sink. This was the moment he had been dreading. After all the progress, after all the hope, they were about to lose thousands of lives. But as he watched the human fleet respond to the crisis, he realized he was about to witness something that would change his understanding of courage forever. The radiation wave from Kairos Prime's dying star hit the 3 transport ships like a hammer. Commander Vex watched in horror as the ship's energy shields flickered and failed. Warning lights flashed red across the New Horizons bridge as emergency signals poured in from the damaged vessels. Transport ships Eagle's Wing, Freedom's Hope, and Star Carrier are all reporting critical system failures, Lieutenant Commander Kate Phillips announced. Life support is failing on all 3 ships. They have maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. Admiral Chen stood perfectly still, studying the tactical display. The 3 ships were trapped between the dying star and the rest of the fleet. Another, massive radiation wave was building in the star's core, ready to finish what the first wave had started. How many people are on those ships? She asked quietly. 7,800 Zolarian refugees and 400 human crew members, Phillips replied. Commander Vex felt sick. After everything they had accomplished, after all the lives they had saved, they were about to lose 8,000 people to the dying star's final rage. Admiral, said Commander Ryan Torres, Admiral Chen's first officer, we could try to get some shuttles through to evacuate the crews, but the radiation levels would kill anyone who tried to make the trip. Admiral Chen studied the display for another moment. Then she turned to the navigation officer. Helmsman, move us between those ships and the star. Use our shields to create a safe corridor. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what she was ordering. The New Horizon would have to position itself directly in the path of the radiation storm, using its own shields to protect the damaged ships while they were repaired. Admiral, Commander Torres said carefully, the radiation will destroy our primary systems. We might not survive this. Admiral Chen looked at him with calm eyes. Commander, 8,000 people will definitely not survive if we don't try. She turned to the communications officer. Send a message to all department heads. I need volunteers for radiation repair duty. Make it clear that this is extremely dangerous work. Within minutes, the responses started coming in. Every department head volunteered. Every senior officer volunteered. When the call went out to the general crew, over 300 people signed up immediately. Chief Petty Officer Nicole Brooks was the first to report to the emergency repair station. She was a small woman with steady hands and 20 years of engineering experience. Behind her came dozens of other volunteers, all knowing they were about to risk their lives for people they had never met. Brooks, I can't order you to do this, Admiral Chen said when she met with the repair teams. The radiation levels where you're going will be lethal within minutes. Admiral, with respect, you don't need to order us, Brooks replied. We volunteered because it's the right thing to do. Those people need our help. The New Horizon moved into position between the dying star and the damaged ships. The moment they entered the radiation field, alarms started sounding throughout the ship. The radiation was so intense that it overloaded the ship's sensors and communications systems. Chief Brooks led the first repair team to the damaged transport, Eagle's Wing. They had to travel in specially shielded work pods, but even with protection, they could only work for 15 minutes at a time before the radiation exposure became deadly. The transport ship was in terrible condition. The radiation had melted through hull plating and destroyed most of the ship's power systems. The life support systems were failing, and thousands of Zalarian families were trapped inside, slowly suffocating. We need to reroute power from the emergency batteries to the air recycling systems, Brooks told her team over the radio. That should buy them another few hours. Working in the radiation storm was like trying to repair a ship while being slowly cooked alive. The repair teams worked in 15-minute shifts, rushing back to the New Horizon between repairs to recover from radiation exposure. Many of them were getting sick, but none of them quit. Engineering specialist Tom Martinez worked on the Freedom's Hope, trying to restart its damaged engines. The radiation had fused several key components, and he had to replace them by hand while wearing a bulky radiation suit. "Tom, your exposure levels are getting dangerous," Chief Brooks warned over the radio. "You need to come back." "Almost got it," Tom replied, his voice strained. "Just need another few minutes." He stayed at his post until the engines came online, then collapsed from radiation poisoning as soon as he returned to the New Horizon. Dr. Rachel Martinez rushed him to the medical bay, where she worked frantically to save his life. Captain Steve Parker flew his small rescue shuttle through the radiation storm, moving between the damaged ships to evacuate the most critically injured refugees. His shuttle was hit by plasma bursts from the dying star, but he refused to abandon his mission. "Steve, your shuttle is taking too much damage," Admiral Chen radioed. "Return to base immediately." "Negative, Admiral. I've got 50 injured kids on board. I'm getting them to safety first." Parker's shuttle made 6 trips through the radiation storm, carrying wounded Zalarians to the medical ships. By the time he finally returned to the New Horizon, his shuttle was barely holding together and he was suffering from severe radiation burns. Dr. Rachel Martinez had turned the New Horizon's medical bay into a trauma center. She was treating both human crew members suffering from radiation exposure and Zalarian refugees rescued from the damaged ships. She worked for 18 straight hours, moving from patient to patient without rest. Commander Vex found her treating his own daughter, Kira, who had been aboard the damaged star carrier. The little girl had been badly burned when the ship's life support systems failed, but Dr. Martinez was carefully healing her injuries. "Doctor, thank you," Vex said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you for saving her." Dr. Martinez looked up from her work, her face tired but determined. "She's going to be fine, Commander. All of these children are going to be fine. We won't let anything happen to them." The repair work continued through the night. Chief Brooks and her teams made trip after trip into the radiation storm, gradually restoring power and life support to the damaged ships. Several crew members were hospitalized with radiation poisoning, but they had saved the critical systems. On the star carrier, the largest of the damaged ships, the situation was the most desperate. The ship's main reactor had been damaged, and, without it, the ship could not generate enough power for life support. Petty Officer Linda Gray volunteered for the most dangerous job of all, manually restarting the reactor from inside the radiation-flooded engine room. "Linda, the radiation levels in there will kill you in 5 minutes," Chief Brooks warned. "Then, I better work fast," Linda replied. She entered the engine room wearing the heaviest radiation suit they had, but even with protection, the radiation was overwhelming. Her hands shook as she worked to reconnect the damaged power couplings. The radiation was so intense that her suit's electronics began to fail, but Linda kept working. She managed to restart the reactor and restore power to the ship's life support systems before collapsing from radiation exposure. Chief Brooks dragged her unconscious body back to safety, but the star carrier was saved. As dawn broke over the dying star, all 3 damaged ships had been successfully repaired. Their life support systems were working, their engines were online, and the 8,000 people aboard them were safe. The cost had been high. 12 human crew members were in critical condition from radiation poisoning. The New Horizon itself had suffered severe damage to its primary systems, but they had succeeded. Every single person had been saved. Admiral Chen stood on her damaged bridge, looking at the reports from all 3 ships. Commander Vex stood beside her, still amazed by what he had witnessed. "Admiral, why did your people do this? Why did they risk everything for us?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but sure. "Commander, we did it because that's what you do for people. You help them even when it's dangerous, even when it costs you something, even when they used to be your enemies." She looked at the tactical display showing all the human ships, damaged, but still flying, still carrying their precious cargo of Zalarian refugees to safety. That's what makes us human. 6 months after the rescue of Kiros Prime, Commander Vex Thalen stood on the observation deck of New Kepler Station, watching ships come and go from the planet below. The world that had been chosen for his people was beautiful. Green forests, covered rolling hills, blue oceans stretched to the horizon, and 3 small moons hung in the purple sky. It was nothing like Kiros Prime, but it was home now. "The morning supply run is coming in," said Captain Jake Morrison, joining Vex at the viewing window. Morrison had stayed to help coordinate the settlement efforts, and over the months he had become something Vex had never expected to have. "A human friend. What are they bringing today?" Vex asked. "Medical supplies for the new hospital, construction materials for the schools, and I think Dr. Martinez ordered some special equipment for the research center." The research center. 6 months ago, Vex would never have believed that humans and Zalarians could work together on anything. Now they were building joint research facilities, sharing technology, and planning exploration missions to distant stars. "Jake, can I ask you something that has been bothering me?" "Sure. When your people first arrived at Kairos Prime, you could have demanded anything from us. Payment, territory, our complete surrender. We were helpless, but you asked for nothing. Why?" Jake was quiet for a moment, watching a transport ship land at the spaceport below. "Vex, if we had demanded payment or territory, what would that have made us? Conquerors. Like we were." "Exactly. And conquering people doesn't solve problems. It just creates bigger problems." Down on the planet's surface, the city of New Kelvar was growing every day. It was not like the old Zalarian cities with their military fortresses and weapon factories. This city had parks where children played, schools where young Zalarians learned alongside human teachers, and hospitals where human and Zalarian doctors worked together. Dr. Rachel Martinez had established the first joint medical academy on New Kepler. She taught Zalarian students human healing techniques while learning traditional Zalarian medicine from their elders. The combination of both medical traditions was creating breakthrough treatments that neither species could have developed alone. "The first graduation ceremony is next week," Vex told Jake. 50 new doctors, half human and half Zalarian. They will serve on ships throughout the galaxy. That's going to change things. Imagine having medical teams that understand the biology of multiple species. Admiral Lisa Chen had been promoted to head of Human-Zalarian Relations, a new department created specifically to manage the growing partnership between the 2 species. She spent her time traveling between human and Zalarian space, negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Her latest project was the construction of joint exploration ships, vessels crewed by both humans and Zalarians, and designed to seek out new worlds and new civilizations. The first ship, called the Unity, was scheduled to launch within the year. "Admiral Chen wants to name you as the Zalarian commander of the Unity," Jake told Vex. "Me? But I'm a military officer. I know nothing about peaceful exploration." "That's exactly why she wants you. You understand both the old way of thinking and the new way. You can help other species see that change is possible." The transformation of Zalarian society had been remarkable to watch. The old military structure had been converted into a civilian service organization, focused on helping others rather than conquering them. Young Zalarians who once would have been trained as soldiers were now becoming doctors, teachers, engineers, and explorers. General Carr Volan, Vex's old friend, now ran the Zalarian Rescue Corps. It was an organization inspired by the human teams that had saved them at Kiros Prime. When disasters struck anywhere in the galaxy, Zalarian rescue ships were among the first to respond. We received a distress call from the Draconis system, Carr told Vex during their weekly meeting. Asteroid impact on their main colony. They're requesting immediate medical assistance. Are we sending ships? 3 medical frigates and a supply vessel. Captain Rodriguez is leading the mission. Alex Rodriguez had transferred from the human Marines to help train the new Zalarian rescue teams. He taught them that true strength came from protecting others, not from defeating enemies. His training methods were copied throughout Zalarian space. The story of the Kiros Prime rescue had spread across the galaxy. Other species watched in amazement as the Zalarians transformed from conquerors into helpers. Trade routes that had been closed for decades reopened. Diplomatic relations were established with civilizations that had once been enemies. But the most important changes were happening between individuals. Chief Engineer Maya Patel had established an engineering exchange program. Young Zalarians learned advanced human technology while human engineers studied traditional Zalarian designs. The combination was producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Maya's new ship designs are incredible, Jake told Vex. She's combined human shield technology with Zalarian hull materials. The result is ships that are both tougher and more efficient than anything we've built before. Captain Sarah Williams now commanded the first joint hospital ship, a massive vessel staffed by doctors from a dozen different species. The ship traveled throughout the galaxy, providing medical care to anyone who needed it, regardless of their species or political affiliation. We treated over 1 million patients last year, Sarah reported during a conference call with the Leadership Council. The joint medical protocols we developed are now being used by hospitals throughout known space. The cultural exchanges were just as important as the technological ones. Human children on New Kepler learned traditional Zalarian music and stories. Zalarian families celebrated human holidays alongside their own. Mixed marriages between humans and Zalarians were becoming common, creating a new generation that belonged to both cultures. But perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed both humans and Zalarians. The rescue at Kairos Prime had proven that enemies could become allies, that compassion was more powerful than conquest, and that cooperation could achieve things that no single species could accomplish alone. The Altarian Federation, which had refused to help during the evacuation, was now requesting human assistance with their own refugee crisis. The Etherian Collective had established permanent diplomatic missions in both human and Zalarian space. Even the proud Corvan Empire had begun adopting human-style humanitarian protocols. The galaxy is changing, Admiral Chen observed during one of her visits to New Kepler. Species that have been enemies for centuries are starting to work together. Trade is increasing, wars are decreasing, and it all started with one decision to help people who needed it. Commander Vex often thought about that moment on his bridge when Captain Morrison's face had appeared on the screen. The moment when everything changed. The moment when he learned that there were people in the galaxy who would help their enemies simply because it was the right thing to do. The Unity launches next week, Jake reminded him as they prepared to leave the observation deck. Are you ready for your first peaceful exploration mission? Vex smiled. I'm ready to learn what it means to explore instead of conquer, to discover instead of destroy, to build instead of break. As they walked through the corridors of New Kepler Station, Vex saw human and Zalarian children playing together, their laughter echoing through the halls. He saw doctors from both species working together to treat patients. He saw engineers, collaborating on designs for ships that would carry messages of peace instead of weapons of war. The fear that had once spread across the galaxy when Zalarian ships appeared was gone. Now, when the distinctive outline of a Zalarian rescue vessel dropped out of hyperspace, people felt relief instead of terror. The final entry in Admiral Chen's official report on the Kiros Prime rescue operation had become famous throughout the galaxy. Today we learned that being human is not about the species you belong to. It is about the choice to help others even when they do not deserve it, even when it is dangerous, even when nobody else will. The Zalarians have learned this lesson well. The galaxy is a better place because of it. Commander Vex closed his eyes and remembered his dying homeworld, the desperation of those final days and the moment when hope arrived in the form of human ships. He remembered Admiral Chen's words, "Today you are not our enemies. Today you are people who need help." Those words had changed everything. They had saved 40 million lives, transformed an entire civilization, and proven that the galaxy did not have to be ruled by fear and conquest. As Vex prepared for his first mission aboard the Unity, he carried those words with him. They would guide him as he helped spread the message that compassion was the greatest strength of all.